Greetings everybody, this is Leviathan here, bringing you, finally, the Shadows Impale Greater Rift build guide. As you can see on screen, I am in the middle, or just starting, a Greater Rift 105, and of course this is not a new build, but the patch 2.6.1 PTR has just buffed pretty much everything through the roof, and Shadows also got touched. So those of you who are familiar with the Shadows playstyle, you're in luck. You'll be able to continue to use this build when the new patch drops, when Season 12 goes live, and you should be able to clear some very high Greater Rifts. I was able to do here on the PTR on Hardcore, Greater Rift 105, and then even took it up to 108 and was just swimming through it, doing very, very solidly. So you can see it's always been kind of the build that goes and seeks out the elites. You want to kill elites and focus mainly on those. Sometimes you will get some, you know, meaty enemies in packs and you can try and take those down. But for the most part, you really are looking for elites. That's what you want to kill. So we will come back to this video and talk about exactly what's going on here. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and hop into my D3 planner to let you guys see all the items and skills, gear, etc., everything that you need to get this build to come together. There will be a link to both this and a Diablo fans build guide in the description below, so feel free to check that out at your leisure. We're going to go ahead and start with the skills. That is a pretty simple thing here. Companion with Wolf Companion. This is just a damage buff. Helps you continue to dole out the damage that you need in these high level Greater Rifts. And you actually can go with the Boar if you feel like you need more defense. That's something to keep in mind, but for the most part you should be taking Wolf for the damage. Of course, it's an Impale build after all, so you gotta have the Impale skill. I have Ricochet here, which is the lightning rune. Both Ricochet and Over Penetration, which is the cold rune, are both valid choices. Mainly, you're just going to let your gear dictate that. So if you have a really good Traveler's Pledge with lightning, a really good Holy Point shot with lightning, you should probably go Ricochet. If you have cold on those, go with Over Penetration. But for the most part, I actually prefer Ricochet just because I feel like it allows me to manage my hatred better and keep up the Aquila Cuirass damage reduction a little bit easier. Next up is Volt with Rattling Roll. This is how you're going to activate your Strong Arm Bracers. Whenever you roll into an enemy, you will stun them, and this is something that you want to essentially do the cycle before you get to whatever element you're using. So, you know, say you're going with lightning, I believe the one before that would be fire, so when you see fire come up, you will Rattling Roll Vault through the elite that you want to target, and then that means they'll be debuffed throughout the duration of your lightning cycle of COE, Convention of Elements, and then you can get max damage against them. So this is great, and we also have free vaults because we're using Chain of Shadows, the belt that allows us to vault for 2 seconds for free after we use Impale. Next, Shadow Power, and I have no rune here because you get all the runes with the Shadow set. That is something to keep in mind, so the only choice that you're really making here are the color of the wings that you get from the Shadow Power if you choose a rune. If you don't choose a rune, I believe they're red. Fan of Knives with Bladed Armor. This is solely just for the defense. You gain 40% additional armor for 6 seconds. You have pretty much the cooldown that you need to keep your Vengeance up 100% with the Dawn in the Cube, and with cooldown in your Paragon, and 1 source of cooldown on gear, along with your Gogok when it's fully stacked up. And all that essentially means that you should have a very low cooldown on your Fan of Knives as well too, so this buff for your armor should be up pretty much the entire time. And like I mentioned, Vengeance, you will have 100% uptime on this if you do what I just said for the CDR requirements. Dark Heart is the rune here for the damage reduction. You don't have any issues with generating hatred because of how Karlei's point works, so you're going to go with Dark Heart here. Alrighty then, next are your passives. Awareness is just going to keep you alive, your Cheat Death proc. In the high Greater Rifts, of course, you will take some pretty extreme damage. You do have a lot of things to mitigate damage and also to sustain your health, but a Cheat Death is always nice, and of course on Hardcore, a Cheat Death is essentially essential. Numbing Traps is another defensive buff for us here, so enemies that you slow, chill, or hit with Fan of Knives, Spike Trap, Caltrops, Grenades, and Sentry have their damage reduced by 25% for 5 seconds. So you actually always have this up because you're using a Bane of the Trapped in this build, and that will, when you get the rank 25 unlock, always apply a slow. So even though We do have Fan of Knives. You don't need to hit the enemies with it to trigger numbing traps. Just being next to them in proximity with Bane of the Trapped is enough to activate this, so they'll just be doing 25% less damage to you. Call of the Week, a staple in many Demon Hunter builds. This will increase your damage against slowed or chilled enemies by 20%, and like I said, you'll be slowing pretty much everything that you're standing next to with Bane of the Trapped, so this one's good to go. And last but not least, we got Leech. There is a cause, perhaps if you want to use Ambush instead, just to get some extra damage against those healthier enemies, but for the most part, Leech is going to be fantastic because you need sustain in your build, and this is a passive that gives you a lot of that, so you're going to get some life per hit here, and you can actually get more life per hit based on the amount of life per kill that you have on gear, and that's a secondary affix. You can look for that on your weapon, your pants, your chest, and your belt, and it can come in some other sources too, but those will be the main ones that you're looking for. And if you don't get it, it's not the worst, but it again is very nice because it feeds into your life per hit, both here and also in your Shadow Power, because like I mentioned, Shadow Power has all these other runes. You get to slow enemies movement speed when you activate your Shadow Power. You only really activate it once as soon as you get into the Greater Rift though. This doubles your life per hit gained, and that's just on the base of Shadow Power, which you should say gives you 26,821 life per hit, and like mentioned previously, life per kill also feeds into your life per hit here, so you can see both on Shadow Power and on Leech it's very important, or at least very nice to get your life per kill up. Well of Darkness reduces discipline cost of using Shadow Power. And you can actually also activate Shadow Power, I should mention this, if you find that you're in good positioning and you don't want to move to get your elusive ring damage reduction up again. You might just hit Shadow Power and then stand where you are rather than trying to vault and then come back to that exact same spot. So that is one application where you will use Shadow Power even though you already have it active from the start of the Greater Rift. Gloom is a rune here that also reduces your damage taken by 35%, so nice damage reduction. And then Shadow Glide gives you some increased movement speed, 30%. So Shadow Power is just really nice, a lot going on there for you. Those are your passives and a little bit on Shadow Power. And then of course in the cube, you're going to have a Dawn that is pretty much standard for every Demon Hunter build at this point. Gives you a 65% cooldown reduction on Vengeance. A Aquila Cuirass. You actually can keep this up pretty much the entire time in a Greater Rift because you'll be getting your hatred back with the way that Karlei's point works. It refunds hatred whenever you hit an enemy that's already been impaled. You'll be hitting tons of enemies that have already been impaled, so you'll always be getting hatred back, essentially staying topped off the entire time, getting this nice 50% damage reduction. And then last but not least, I did mention the Elusive Ring, and this is a damage reduction item as well. After casting Shadow Power, Smokescreen, or Volt, you have 50 to 60% reduced damage for 8 seconds. Of course, it's in our cube, so we get that max value of 60%. And like I said, if that's going to fall off, but you like your positioning, go ahead and activate Shadow Power, but do realize it will eat into your discipline, so it's something to keep in mind. Alright, so those are the skills. We'll go ahead and quickly hit the items. We have the 6-piece set of the Shadow set. It is worth noting that on the PTR, patch 2.6.1, there was a hot fix recently to improve the 6-piece set bonus. All the other stuff about it is the same, so 2-piece set, while equipped with a melee weapon, damage is increased by 1200%. 4-piece set, like I was mentioning, gives you Shadow Power, all runes, and then 6-piece set, Impale deals an additional, right now on PTR, 50,000% weapon damage to the first enemy hit. So that's a nice buff, huge damage against the first enemy, so that's why we're targeting the elites in particular, and then positioning very nicely to make sure that you're hitting the elites first. We'll go ahead and just sweep through the different pieces of the set. So we have the gloves here, I itemize them for attack speed, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and area damage. Area damage is really nice just because if you can get it high enough, you have such a huge multiplier on your damage. Any area damage will also reflect that throughout whatever else you're trying to kill. So you might kill some trash as a result of trying to kill the elite. So area damage is really important, and attack speed allows you to attack a little bit faster too. On your shoulders here, dex, all res, area damage, cooldown reduction. Helm is going to have dexterity, critical hit chance, impale, and then a socket, which you will put, another source of cooldown reduction. You put that max diamond in there. So a max diamond in the helm, one source of cooldown reduction, which I just mentioned is on our shoulders, maxed out cooldown reduction in Paragon, the 10%, and then a max Dawn in the cubes, 65%, and your Gogok when it's stacked up to the 15 stacks, then you will have perfect uptime on Vengeance. So you might want to wait to activate your Vengeance until you have all 15 stacks so that you never have it fall off again. Next is the chest. I have Dex Vit, reduced damage from elites, and then on the secondaries, physical resistance and reduced damage from range. It can be reduced damage from range, it could be reduced damage from melee, it could be life after each kill. Doesn't really matter, but those are some nice secondaries to have. But the reduced damage from elites is highly underrated, I feel, and really strong, especially in the high level greater rifts, where all you're really doing is fighting the elites, and this will help you take reduced damage from all their affixes and stuff like that. We have the pants here, pretty standard, Dex Vit, all res, and sockets. Like I mentioned, this is a piece where you can get life after each kill, so look for that there. On your boots, you're going Dex Vit, all res, and impale damage. So there are a couple of sources where you can get impale damage. That's going to be boots, helm, and of course the quiver. Holy point shot. These are pretty tough to itemize for, but if you can get some good stats on it, it's going to go a long way. So lightning skills deal 20% more damage, 1000 dex. Attack speed increase by 20%, critical hit chance increase 10%, increase impale damage. And then secondaries, you can actually have 2 secondaries here, so you can go like max discipline and health globes or something like that. But this is another piece that really brings the build together. It's required, of course, because it allows your impale to throw out 2 additional knives, which is huge damage. For the other ancillary items, of course, Karlei's Point, which I've been talking about a decent amount. This is the dagger here that will allow your impales to return hatred if it hits an enemy that's already impaled. So that's how you keep your hatred topped off and keep the Kill or Cuirass bonus up. You have a 10% damage roll here, increased attack speed 7%, chance to deal area damage, and then your base damage and life after each kill on secondary. This would technically be a perfect Karlei's Point in my opinion, and I rolled off the dex to get, you know, one of those other, whether it be attack speed or area damage, because again, those are both stats that are really strong, and attack speed in particular on the weapon is very important. It's multiplicative. The Chain of Shadows is another interesting item here. It's a belt, itemized very normally, Dex Vit, all res, life percent, and this is again another source you can get life after each kill. The power here is particularly potent. After using Impale, Vault costs no resource for 2 seconds. You want to use this, even though it might seem tempting to go Witching Hour or something that would be a little bit more offensive. You cannot stress how awesome it is to be able to reposition at will, to be able to just say, I want to vault over here or over there with no cost at all. And you're going to use that both defensively to reposition out of bad affixes and bad spots that you might get put into, and also use it offensively, like I said, to activate your strong arm bracers. And we'll actually go to that item next. Pretty standard itemization, lightning skill damage. Oh, I should have strength on there, sorry. So it should be dex, vitality, and crit hit chance. And then the secondary, you can have anything there, reduced damage from range, from melee, from physical or physical resistance, and then of course that 30% damage increase after a knockback for 6 seconds. So that's what you're aiming for, that high side of that percent. It ranges from 20 to 30. On your jewelry now, we have a convention of elements. You're going to itemize either way. I would suggest, or probably figure, that you'll end up with an elusive ring being used because it has a shorter range, 50 to 60% on the legendary power, versus the convention of elements where it's 150 to 200%. And you of course want the highest side of that as possible. So you probably end up with a convention in your cube, but these are the stats that you want. Critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and then a chance to deal 20% area damage. Secondary, again, is going to be whatever. Physical resistance is nice. On the other side, you're going with the Endless Walk setup. So you have Compass Rose, Traveler's Pledge. Compass Rose is going to look like 650 dex, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and chance to deal area damage. Again here, you actually will always have dex on there because you have to roll off the movement speed that it always comes with. So this is exactly what one of the best versions of this Compass Rose would look like. And then last but not least, Traveler's Pledge. Pretty standard, lightning, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and your secondaries again toss up physical resistance, melee reduction, range reduction, and then sockets in all your jewelry, and the legendary gems that we're using here. Pain enhancer, and this is going to increase your attack speed. Like I mentioned, you want to be able to get as many impales out as fast as possible, so whenever you're in density, you want to be making sure that you're concentrating your attack on the elite or the elites, so that you're hitting the first enemy with that bonus from the set. But you also will be hitting other enemies around you and then proccing the pain enhancer, the secondary in particular, which gives you that 3% increase attack speed for each bleeding enemy within 20 yards. You can choose to level this up if you want, but the main part of it, the critical hits causing the enemies to bleed, doesn't matter too much, just free damage. You have a Gogok of Swiftness. This one you definitely want to level as much as possible, just because you get a little bit of everything that's really nice for the build. The cooldown reduction, which is paramount to keeping your Vengeance up 100%. Attack speed, to again be able to attack faster with Impale. And then the dodge chance, which actually can help a lot in terms of mitigating damage, just getting some free dodges from stuff. You can even dodge molten explosions, although I don't recommend trying. In case you get stuck, it could help. And then I did mention previously, Bane of the Trapped. You want to level this as high as possible. It's the best defensive gem, or sorry, best offensive gem in my opinion. The secondary part of it procs the first part, so once you unlock the rank 25, then you have the permanent movement speed reduction of the enemies, and then they'll be crowd controlled from that, which unlocks the multiplier. Get your damage really moving. Okay, so that is that. Your Paragon priority, you're pretty much going to be going with, you know, maxing out your movement speed, since we don't have movement speed on any of these other pieces. And then the rest will be dumped into Dex. You do see we roll off Vit on quite a few pieces, so if your Vitality, if your life isn't looking that great, feel free to put some points into Vitality. I personally like to have around 600,000 life on my Demon Hunter, so look to see that. But pretty much you want to dump the rest into Dexterity. Of course, augment all these with Dexterity as well, with your Call de Sans Despair. In the offensive tab, you're going to be going with the cooldown reduction, because again, I mentioned it's very important to get that 100% uptime on Vengeance. You will then go into probably critical hit damage, then critical hit chance, and then attack speed. They're all very useful, but that's probably the most priority based on increased tier damage. And then in defense, you're going all res, armor percent, life percent, and then life regen. And in the last tab there, you're going to go area damage, life per hit, resource cost reduction, and then gold find. So that is pretty much how it goes. I will go ahead and get you back into the Greater Rift Clearer and allow you to see that. And you can see how the build kind of operates. This was a pretty okay Greater Rift. I actually don't even really remember it anymore at this point. But I think this clear comes in just under a little 10 minutes or so. So go ahead, feel free to check out the clear here. Again, those links to the D3 Planner and the Diablo Fans Guide will be in the description below. Hop into the comments, let me know what you think about the increased stuff for Shadows set coming up. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention. Wow, I can't believe I forgot this actually. One of the other things that's making the build incredibly potent is the Karlei's Point also got an update on the patch 2.6.1 PTR, and so that now has a multiplier on the legendary power that will take it up to, I believe, 500% now. And again, these numbers of course can be subject to change. We might see things move in a direction where they maybe tone it down or so, but as it's operating right now, the damage output is actually insane. So yeah, it's really nice right now. Getting that multiplier on the Karlei's Point just really helps to continue to boost this build up to the highest of heights. So yeah, keep that in mind as well too. But yeah, again, make sure to hop into the comments if you do try the build. Let me know how you enjoy it, if you enjoy it. And I will get back to you for more videos coming from the PTR. I'll probably upload my Greater Rift 108 clear as well too, so you can see what that looks like. That one was a little slower. But I think that Demon Hunters in general are going to have a lot to look forward to. You've got UE Grenade still, you've got UE Multi-Shot, which is looking really strong. Marauder's got a buff as well too, and that's still looking pretty decent. And then of course Nats as well got a nice buff to its 6-piece, and people are looking to team that up with the Fan of Knives thing. So Demon Hunters, man, should be looking good next season. Lots of speed farming, lots of good Greater Rift builds. I'm excited. Until next time, friends, I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy the rest of this clear.